This is Fan Electric Ghost, and we are live on the air on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, and Twitter. And we're with our guest tonight, Angela Myer. And this is the first time she's been on the show. But we wanted to let everybody know that we are on Newsly within an hour. We'll be on that platform, so you can stop scrolling and start listening. Use coupon code GHOST and get 1 month premium subscription for free, so you can stop scrolling and start listening. So thank you for being on the program. How are you tonight?
I'm doing really good. Thank you for having me here. I'm really excited.
Well, we always like to have all kinds of people on the show. We initially started with only interviewing musicians, and then we've gone beyond that to talking to, shamans, CEOs, film directors, actors,
Great.
painters, all different types of people, because it's just, it's the podcast universe has expanded, and so our show has become that. We've been on the air since 2016, but
Wow.
yeah, now, well, as a video, 2020, but we've been doing podcasts since 2016. So,
Good for you.
then for being on the show. One of the things we like to talk about with people that come on the show is like what you want to focus on. I see you've been multiple things. You're a certified hypnotherapist, an NLP practitioner. Maybe you can tell people what NLP is, an author, a motivational speaker, and a wellness coach. So I'm not familiar with NLP. Can you tell people what that is?
NLP is what you would consider neuro-linguistic programming. And I was actually at a 2-day event in Washington, and a gentleman came up to me and he was asking me about, him getting certified in NLP. And I told him that there's two aspects to it. There's one aspect where if you're into sales, it's really great because it teaches you rapport with people. A lot of, I hate to say this, car salesmen go into some of the NLP training because they know how to convince you based on, if you're visual, auditory, kinesthetic. So an example would be you knew the make and model of the car you wanted, but not until you drove it and you felt how it drove were you convinced you wanted to buy it. So
Yeah.
that shows that more how the car feels matters more to you than how the car looks.
Oh, you're that type of person. You're more like,
Yes, and they'll use that to their advantage. And so I told him, I said, I don't like manipulating people and, in that way based on the language that they use and stuff. I said, but there's parts of NLP that I love, and that's parts therapy. That's the timeline therapy and future pacing, because all of us have different conflicting parts within us. And a good example of that could be, I really want to do this, but there's a part of me, I just can't do it. And so that part is actually, running the show in the background. And some people think of it as that part is self-sabotage. But if you research it, that part always has a positive underlying intent because it's trying to keep you safe. So a good story I share with people about parts therapy, and this is one gentleman I worked with. He hated the holidays, especially Christmas. And there was one year he came into the clinic I was working at, and he was ranting and raving, hated the Christmas tree, hated the Christmas music, decorations, just hated it. And they wanted me to have a serious talk with him. So I pulled him aside and I'm like, dude, what happened to you during the holidays, especially Christmas? I know you got a story behind it. Everybody does. You got a story behind it. There's a part of you that hates it. Why? So he shared that when he was around 9 years old, he loved Christmas so much. And he grew up in a family that, was Russian, and their belief was you do not get the Christmas tree until Christmas Eve. That's when you get it. You decorate the house. That's when you start to celebrate Christmas. Well, this year he didn't want to wait. And while his parents were at work, he wasn't at school that day. He didn't have to go. So he went out, cut down a tree, dragged it all the way home, decorated the whole house. And when they walked in after work, he was like, surprise, let's celebrate Christmas early. Well, he did not get the response he expected. his parents were so mad at him. They made him take the tree down, throw it outside, pack up all the decorations. And while he was standing on the stairs before he was going to go be sent to his room, his parents said, now you're not going to get dinner tonight. I want you to go to your room and think about what you did was wrong. And when you're ready to come down and apologize, well, then we'll talk. And I was like, that is messed up.
Yeah.
I said to him, okay, now I understand that part of you that hates Christmas because you don't want to get wounded again. And you don't want to get disappointed or hurt again. So you hate it. But then there's this part of you that loved it so much. But here's the key thing I told him is, I know you have kids and Christmas is for children. And it's all about love and joy and celebration and being together. And you're killing that joy, that love, that celebration. So would you like to fix that? And the guy got all emotional and he's like, yes, I know I'm ruining it for my kids. I shouldn't be doing this. It's not fair to them. And so we did a parts therapy. I had him go back along that timeline to when he was that little boy and have a conversation with him, because that part of him still thinks he's 9 years old, but the guy was literally in his 40s. And so I had to have him give that part a new job. He had to apologize to it. He had to thank it for, keeping him safe and stuff and preventing him from getting hurt. But now that he had kids, it was wreaking havoc. So I had those two parts to come together. Then what I did was I had those two parts go out into the future and see how would it be to where they could all enjoy the holidays together. The kids laughing and smiling, him enjoying the joy and love in his kids' eyes, and just really, making the most of it. And he was like, wow, it changed his life.
That's really interesting. I think people get caught in a loop,
Yes.
Because I'm a musician, we can kind of think about the same ideas, but people get stuck in a period, and what we do as musicians, we try to actually recall, like cinematically through music, people, will take our songs and it'll bring them back to a moment that's important to them, even though it's universal. And sometimes people get stuck in those moments and then they keep on listening to that same song and they put it on repeat because they keep on reliving that point. And sometimes we're like, as an artist, it's like, people will like that one song and they won't like anything else because they like being in that loop and then they won't go beyond that. And so it's like, you said, well, we want you to listen to something else. Don't keep on listening to the same thing. But it's the same idea. Like you got to get out of that pattern. Otherwise it's like, it's not fair to his kids to be stuck in that position, though that's where he was. So, I mean, that's a reality for him.
Yeah. So in reality, his whole reality changed, which was a positive, and it just supported, everyone along the way. And so I really do like NLP, and they've actually explored more. There's another form of therapy called IFS. It's internal family systems. And that is all about parts therapy as well. And because we, as human beings, we do have all these little parts that are running, the show in the background. And when we're born whole, we're just this pure, whole, solid person. And with certain life experiences and things that happen, those parts get fragmented. They break away from the whole. And it forms these different personalities and different behaviors and different traits within ourselves. And they all are, designed to, it's all about survival and, perseverance and resilience and all of that. And sometimes it just gets to a point in a person's life where they need to put those puzzle pieces back together and become whole again and really find your authentic self, not what society wants of you or religion or your parents or, all this other stuff, all these beliefs and things that are just like filled in your mind when you're growing up. Now you get to find yourself. How do you want to feel? How do you want to live? How do you want to be? Do you want to exist or do you want to live?
Yeah, that's true. I mean, so you're a podcaster as well, and you've
Yeah.
named your podcast. You have a book, right? That's the same name as your podcast. Is
Yes.
that true?
Yeah. The book is The Undetected Narcissist. And I wrote it to save lives, really, and to support families and to really protect children. Because when I was recovering from being in a relationship with a covert narcissist, every book that I looked into, nobody told their story. And we have been storytellers for thousands of years. I mean, we sat around the campfire and told stories. Then we would read the newspaper and read books to each other of different stories. And a lot of people were telling me, you need to tell your story. You need to write it because it's so important. And, you've got to do this. And, when I wrote it, it was really, really different. It was challenging, I got to say, but it was very easy because I'm very organized that I had folders for every year. I saved all the emails, all the legal documents. And when I started putting the book together, there was things that I was able to see that I wasn't able to see when I was caught up in all the drama. And so I really learned how to teach people how to decode and detect, emails and legal documents, because when I highlighted just the key words, it was in everybody's face, but no one can see it. And why I called it The Undetected Narcissist is he fooled over a dozen people that were meant to help us out in the community, like a judge, a parent coordinator, an attorney, a child psychologist, a counselor, a therapist. I mean, there was all these people, but when you're not educated and informed, they go undetected.
Mm.
And you get victimized. A person can be turned into a flying monkey. They know how to, smear the person. And it was crazy. I mean, he was even able to convince the judge that if our son who has autism lived with him, then all the autism behaviors would go away. But here's the key, and the judge bought it. But here's the key thing. Our son no longer sees his dad, but he doesn't have the behaviors. And it wasn't the behaviors, it was all trauma related. And
Okay.
no one was trauma informed either.
Wow.
Because when I did the research about trauma, and I'm actually going through a certification to be a master trauma specialist, when I looked into all of that, I'm like, oh my God, all his behaviors were all trauma related because he was being taken away from his secure attachment style with me and being given to a person that had an avoidant attachment style that would neglect him and ignore him and was passive aggressive to him. And it's just, no one was educated in this stuff. And so it went undetected. And so I really wanted to, write about it and talk about it because it is happening to children and families all over the United States every single day. Every single day. And to me, it's a crime. It's considered child abuse.
Yeah, it's like it's psychological, but it also can be, display itself in domestic, violence. Is that
Yes, and that's the
true?
thing. Yes, that's the thing I really want to stress that a lot of people don't understand is when they see the word domestic violence, they immediately think it's you're being physically beaten.
Hmm. You can
No.
be mentally beaten too.
Yes, because emotional and mental abuse is more damaging than physical abuse because when they do it, it is meant to cut so deep like a knife.
Yeah, and
Yeah, and
then
because
nobody
physical
nobody
abuse
can
heals.
address it. But the problem is that, like, if you call the police, if they don't see it physically, then they can't do anything, right? Because they don't see a bruise, they don't see a broken arm, they don't see physical damage, but that psychological damage can be more so so damaging that it can you can stymie your progress. You can keep you from being able to be you. I think you cannot actualize because you're kind of stuck in a loop. You get stuck in that being the victim of that type of thing, and no one believes you. People don't
Well,
believe you.
you get stuck in, you experience identity erosion. Your sense of self gets stripped away because they gaslight you so much to make you question your reality. Then you become hyper vigilant. So then they think you're crazy when you're really not crazy. You just are a heightened state of anxiety. And the hard part is when law enforcement comes involved, the real victim is the one that has the anxiety, the one that is just like, they can appear crazy, but they're not. The real perpetrator is the one that's calm and quiet and
Yeah,
smiling,
talking
you
into him,
know.
you're talking to the officer, and you might be the victim might have gotten so emotional they might be screaming,
Yes.
they might be yelling. So the officer is going to think they're the one with the problem, and then they got some kind of mania. They're acting out, and the other person's totally calm. But just because you're calm doesn't mean you're not. Like even Jeffrey Dahmer was calm. Jeffrey Dahmer got missed because he was so calm. If you think about some of the greatest serial killers, they were super calm. They got past the authorities multiple times. They would be caught, and then they would be let go because this guy's fine. There's no problem with this guy at all because they're really good at kind of faking it. You have that mask on. When you have that mask, people can't see who the real person is because they're good at understanding how they're presenting themselves. And I think that makes it very dangerous. If somebody really knows how to present themselves in any situation, then they can kind of get over on you.
You're exactly right, because in the very first chapter of the book, I talk about, I think her name is Gabby Petio or Pato, the girl that ended up got killed.
Oh, by her boyfriend?
Yes, by her boyfriend.
Yeah,
And the thing is the cops did pull him over, and
they
I
didn't
did
see it.
watch.
Yeah, they
I watched the cam footage, and he was joking and laughing with them and smiling,
yeah, he
and
got over.
she was crying, and she was the one that was, apologetic and everything. But here's the thing they missed is she literally said that he took her face, and she showed with her hands that he squeezed her face and dug his nails into her face, that when she touched her skin, it burned. Okay.
Mhm.
They totally disregarded that, because when he was talking to his superior officer and was thinking of letting them go, the officer asked, did anyone have any bodily injuries? And she did. And he said no.
Mhm.
He totally disregarded, and he told her that she was 100% at fault, which was a crock. Okay. I mean,
Yeah. So that
I
tells you that the police need new training.
yes,
Yeah,
they
well,
really do, because
well,
they
we
can get
I can
numb.
argue that. I can argue that for a couple of reasons, but just being an African American, my experience with the police is sometimes they come into it as a whole different thing. But I think they're under the same kind of situation that women could be running into. African American men, we run into it. I've been pulled over and then people ask me like, "Do I own the car?" The first thing they ask me, "Do I own the car?" Right? So do they ask everybody that? I don't know that. I don't think so. But yeah, I talked to some of my friends. The guy's a kid I've been friends with since 12 years old. He's an Irish lawyer. He said, "Well, no one ever asked me that." And I was like, "Yeah, no, you're a lawyer. You should know." And he's like, "Yeah." He's a defense attorney, so he deals with a lot. But yeah, I mean, the idea, I think the police need a lot of retraining because I don't think they consider sociological aspects. I don't think they get the psychological training. They definitely don't get the kind of compassion training to understand when they're in a domestic violence situation. They need to be trained by psychologists and sociologists so they understand what they're looking at, right? They can pick up this narcissist. If they don't get the training, they're never going to pick it up. They're just going to go, oh, this is the code. I know the law code is all the different rules, but do you understand? You're in a situation where I think you need to understand sociology. You need to understand psychology. You need to
Yeah, you
understand
do.
therapy. And they don't seem to be willing to learn it. Or, maybe there's some are more evolved. I haven't really run into them.
Well, I had a situation where my kiddo kind of broke down, and was having like a psychotic meltdown. And I literally did have to call the police on him. And I had to ask for the mental health unit to come. And when they came, I asked there was 4 officers that actually showed up and 1 mental health person that showed up. And I asked all of them, are any of you trained in narcissism? Do you know about a covert narcissist? And every single one said no.
Yeah,
And then I looked at them and I'm like, well, you need to get educated and informed and trained about this. And I said, now, any of you trained in trauma, direct trauma, indirect trauma? And the mental health guy said, yeah. And I said, well, I said, good. The officers were all no. And I'm like, well, you know what? This actually is a trauma call that you went on. My son is literally having a trauma flashback, mental breakdown. That's why I wanted, the mental health people to be here. And it was like, to me, it was so frustrating because one of the officers, when they sat down and talked to my kiddo, when my son relayed back to me the conversation they had on the doorstep, I was like, what the hell? I mean,
yeah.
I
Well,
was.
they can go very badly in some situations because a lot of times they're trained in so much like criminal type of behavior, right?
Yeah,
And they don't have the sociological and psychological training.
they
You
don't.
could call the cops and your kid could get your kid killed, in
Yeah,
certain situations because they will just automatically go for the gun and it may be not appropriate, but they don't know the difference because they don't have the training, and so certain situations can get way out of hand because
right.
and it's really dangerous. And this is where I think people need to understand, like there's a level of training. It doesn't have to go that far, but it
Right.
happens a lot. People will be surprised how many times that happens. But I think they really need to read your book. They need to get training. They need to understand because the last thing you want to do is call somebody for a call like that and end up make it worse than it was by
Right.
like not being able to get back, come back from it. you know.
Well, exactly. And that's why with my podcast, I really touch on subjects that the best way I like to put it is I live in the gray area because there's too much hate, anger, and fear about narcissism. Okay. There's just too much. And then I'm not going to be like, oh, lovey dovey. Oh, they're, so great. I really live in the gray area because I want to support people in releasing that fear and the victimization and the anger and all of that. But I also want them to feel a sense of wisdom and to have some
Mhm.
kindness and some compassion and understanding, because the real truth is a narcissist isn't born that way. We humans create them. And how they're created is 6 different ways. There's 3 parenting styles. The neglectful parent, which would be, let's say, a woman that's really, really beautiful. She had a child, but she's not really, she's just too much into herself, doesn't want to play with the kid, doesn't want to interact. The next one is an absent parent, like a CEO or president of the company. They'll throw money at the kid, and shower them with gifts, but they're not emotionally available.
Not there, yeah.
Yeah, and then there's the authoritarian, the really strict parent. And then the other 3 ways is bullying, child abuse, and trauma. And when I say trauma is I'm working with a young girl, she's in her 20s, and her mom accidentally died when she was a teenager. And it was so painful for her. And then she got traumatized again because her dad couldn't give her the emotional support she needed because she was grieving so bad. So
Mm.
she literally felt like the world was not a safe place. And she shut down and she just lived in her survivor brain like narcissist people do for a long, long time. And now she's struggling with severe anxiety. She has trouble holding down a job. She has a hard time connecting with other people because now she's formed this avoidant attachment style where she's
Mm.
very independent, but she's doesn't feel like she needs people. She dismisses people. She seems cold and she doesn't like it. And so I'm really working with her letting her know that, yeah, you can be temporarily narcissistic, but you can change. And I did do a podcast about, can a narcissist change? I talk about identity erosion. I talk about attachment styles. I talk about how to decode and detect someone that's narcissist, recovering from psychological abuse, how to communicate with difficult people, and fear of dating another narcissist. I really try to find topics and subjects to talk about these uncomfortable things, but in a way where you can get it.
Would a narcissist be drawn to another narcissist just because that's what they're used to? Like if you're going to date?
Yes, you can. Yes, too avoidant. Yes. The ones that are really close to narcissistic ones would be an avoidant attachment style, and then there's a disorganized attachment style. And I break that down in my podcast. And you can, because that's what was modeled to you growing up. So you seek what is familiar. So if you were grown up in an environment where you, let's say, had a lot of chaos, had a lot of drama and stuff, you're going to gravitate towards people that are similar to you. And it's really hard, because when you meet someone that has a secure attachment, or, had a healthy upbringing, you're going to find those people to be boring. He doesn't have passion. He's,
you kind of need the chaos. It's like you kind of like, I deal with a lot of artists, like musicians, and part of being a musician is sometimes our best work comes from heartbreak, right?
Yes.
So what happens is a lot of artists, in order, like, well, my best work happens from they going through these crucibles. So we go through crucibles to force the art, right?
Yeah.
So then it's like sometimes it's not so comfortable being around an artist because they keep on creating the train wreck, because that generates the topic that gets them the song that people identify with. But if you have to live with them, it's hard to live with them because they're kind of going through this chaos all the time and creating like these very, like, hyper situations that are way beyond what you probably would want, because they have to go through it to write that work. And, if most of the time it's not happy, it's like being unhappy is what causes them to write the good work. And so then they stay unhappy all the time. And that's not probably the best situation to be in.
No. And the thing is if they believe that, then that's their belief that they have, because you can write a song that is so full of love. I mean, we've heard songs like that are just so full of love that it just, you feel it in your bones. Or
like a Stevie Wonder. Like a Stevie Wonder would write songs that are very very forward thinking, very open minded, very spiritual. But then you have like the heartbreak songs. Like the songs that, like, make you sad, like Karen Carpenter sad, they kind of epitomize sadness. Like, even though she was singing something happy, her voice kind of epitomizes sadness. So it has a melancholy in it in itself. And so when you listen to it, it has like a duality. And you're like, oh, and maybe because people found out, but even when I was listening to it in the 70s, I'm a child of the 70s, I kind of felt a melancholy in her voice before I knew what happened to her, later. It just seemed to be like that's part of her whole motif.
Right.
And a lot of artists, they tend to do that. I mean, you have the happy songs, but it seems like the heartbreak songs are the ones that a lot of artists are kind of caught up in that loop. But
well, it's interesting because I remember when I was younger, I used to love the song I Can See Clearly Now It's Raining. I can see clearly now it's raining now. But when you listen to all the lyrics, oh, it's a whole different story.
Yeah, the lyrics sometimes are different than the actual mood of the music.
Yes.
And it's like there's a duality in that we songwriters like to play with. Sometimes we create something that has a good beat, or has really cool, catchy hooks. But if you really read the lyrics, it's depressing. Or it's super melancholy. It's not what it appears to be. When we kind of use it as a trick. It's not, well, it's like a writing trick. When you're writing to kind of draw somebody in, sometimes people really don't listen to the lyrics. They really don't fully get it. They might hear the chorus and they miss the point.
Yes.
Like born in the USA, you might think he's saying I'm a patriot, but he's saying I'm the long gone daddy of the USA. You know, like I came back from Vietnam and things aren't going right. But if all you listen to is I'm born in the USA, you might think it's a
Yes.
patriotic song, but it's not. If you listen to the whole thing, it tells a story that's very sad about a guy coming back from Vietnam and nothing's working right. But you might misinterpret that. And that's one of the tricks of being a songwriter is like you could get a lot of people thinking it's one thing when it's something else.
Right.
You know.
Yeah, no, that's what I've kind of, learned exactly is some people really listen to the lyrics and get the message and some people, don't. And that's where it's gotten harder for me with the way that music has changed nowadays to appreciate and listen to the style of songs that are being created because
Yeah,
there's too
modern
much
music is
lack of
more.
just
Yeah.
lack of self-respect or
Yeah, there's a lot of music forms today that don't go through what I call songcraft. Like if you think
yeah,
about the Beatles, even Pink Floyd, you think about older bands, right? They
yeah,
they had even the structure. I'm a producer, right? People would have like you have the intro, you have the melody, you have the chorus, you have an outro, you have fills. People don't do that. People just have a beat
yeah,
and they keep on repeating the beat. Right? They have a hook and they keep on repeating it to death. Right? They keep on doing the same thing, and it's very like repetitive. And sometimes what I call it like fast food music. Right? It really
exactly.
doesn't. It doesn't like Dylan. Like Dylan is my roadmap. Like the Beatles are my roadmap. Pink Floyd, like Hendrix. You get people who actually puts on like even Jim Morrison. Like he was writing poetry. Dylan, that's poetry. People we used to put time in to actually develop a structure and it's a story. But people don't want to spend 5 minutes. They want to hear it in 2 minutes and 30 seconds. In 2 minutes and 30 seconds, you're never really going to get a story
Right.
that's going to really tell you that much. It's just going to be done. It's going to come in and it's going to be done. So that's like fast food music. Is how you can go and do something. You can jog to it. You can do something else to it, but you're not actually sitting in the basement listening to a Pink Floyd record on vinyl all the way through, or Sergeant Pepper's all the way through. That's not what you're doing with a lot of the modern music.
Yeah, it's interesting. My son's 14 and he's been really digging older music. Like he this morning when I walked in his room, he was listening to Fleetwood Mac and I was like,
Yeah, that's
yes.
classic songwriting. It tells a story. All those songs tell a story. They have
Yeah.
like three singers that are singing like unbelievably well together. Stevie Nicks and like if you think about it, the singers in that band, it's like a Beatles. It's like they're still trying to channel the Beatles, where
Yeah.
voices are important, song structure is important, telling a story is important. That's a classic band. You get things like the Eagles. That's a classic band.
Yeah.
Any of the old school, even Zeppelin, the Who, they even Tommy. That's a rock opera. It tells a story. Quadrophenia, that tells a story. Styx, they had stories. Like the whole album told a story. Now people just want a beat or a hook or something that's outrageous.
Yeah.
And so it's outrageous, and that's what So the main thing to me is like you're just writing a song so you can get a Ferrari, right? So the writer is like you're not writing a song to be like Dylan to actually say something, or Lou Reed because he's a real poet. You're
Yeah.
actually just trying to cause havoc and cause get all the parents upset because you're saying something deep outrageous.
Yeah. No, I hear you.
Yeah. Yeah, so I mean, I do wish that my goal as a producer is to try to do things that are a little bit more depth, but I'm kind of in a different world. I do experimental music, so it's not designed to be in the top 10. But that's I kind of long for the days when it had more meaning. But within the genre I work in, I just do what I can. But yeah, I think it's important for people to have a good soundtrack to their lives that actually is meaningful. And it would be cool, like if kids today could take a song from the top 20 and 20 years from now, they're going to remember it. I'm not sure about that.
Right. And well, that's actually a really good point because I don't think a lot of them, well, because there's, it's the music's got to, move you. It's got to speak to you. It's got to leave a positive impression, on you. And yeah, I mean, I
I'm
love
a big
music is like air, you can't.
yeah. Well, to me, it's like as a musician, we write the music because it's like you have that feeling, you want to convey it. And I think I always looked at music, and George Martin from the Beatles, like, their producer said, I want to think about music like Monet thinks about expressionist paintings. So when I took the Beatles and we started doing Abbey Road, or maybe doing Sgt. Pepper's and Rubber Soul, the idea was that you could create a sound painting. And Hendrix talked about this too. People asked him, "What's Electric Lady? Why do I hear birds? Why do I hear ocean? Why do I hear all these things?" Say, "Well, I'm trying to create a sound painting." So the idea is that that song is going to reflect like more than just a song, but like a cinematic picture. And
Yeah.
when you're an artist, if you can go and use the studio as your canvas, you layer sounds on top of each other to invoke different things.
Yeah.
And that's like you're really working as an artist, not just a hook maker. You're trying to do something that's actually going to be permanent in the kind of canon of the music. And there were artists back in the 70s and the 80s, even to the 2000s, that cared about doing it that way. And it's like less and less, it's more corporate and things that people don't want to do because it's quicker to make a buck. But I think it really roots into like, I think that music has been for me a way to take my emotions and put it into art.
Yes.
And when people take away the art of it, it is kind of depressing because, then you feel like it's just being marketed for a different reason, not for the art. But, I digress.
No, I mean, I get what you mean, because a lot of when I do my work, when I do like a custom recording for a person, it really is art, because I'm weaving in all these different elements, and I make sure I pick the music that would go perfect for the message that I have. And sometimes, like for someone's induction, if they want to go to a tropical island, I have really nice music. I have the sound of the ocean waves in the background. I have,
You're putting together like a sound
yes, I
painting or like a
literally
cinematic
create
kind
a
of thing.
sound painting, and then I'm walking them through it. And some people have literally said that before I say something, they already see it in their mind's eye, and it blows them away. Or when I say, you're going to feel this sensation, and right before I say it, they're already feeling it. And it's
That's
like,
really important. Yeah. I
yeah,
mean,
you
because you,
really can connect with another, human being energetically, and just create this beautiful tapestry of change.
that's
And
what I try to, yeah, I've been trying to promote to people on my podcast that, like, because of the fast food music, that people need to take time
mhm,
and unplug from their phone, right? Turn the messages off, turn the notifications off, quit getting all the Twitter feeds, right? And all the TikTok, and just take an artist and listen to their whole work, right? Take an album and listen to it all the way through, right? And that itself can be a very calming thing like meditation. I kind of
yeah,
use music to kind of fall into it's like reading a novel. Like if you get a really good album, like a Pink Floyd album, if you think about like Wish You Were Here, or that album, or even Animals, if you actually listen to the whole record, it has a whole mood, and it's like listening to a novel. That's when you have a really good artist, you get drawn into it like a film or a play
yep,
or a good TV show. And it's a way to kind of take your brain away from all these other distractions. Because if you're on the phone and you're on your iPad, you're getting hit with all this stuff. Sometimes it's good is to separate from that and just focus. Like read a book, that's a good thing. Just do that or read a
yeah,
poem. But listen to an artist and actually get the full picture of who they are. Not just like their top song. Because the artist, a lot of times, there's a lot more depth in what is not just their single. It's like who they are is represented in their work. And if you listen to the whole thing, it's like reading just the cliff notes to a novel. Are you getting the full picture? Probably not.
yeah. Well, and that's the thing too, is like with any human or an individual, there's so much depth in all of us. and there's so much, knowledge and creativity. It's what are you willing to share with the world, and what are you going to keep to yourself? And the most important thing I feel is your relationship with yourself is key, because if you can't have a healthy relationship with yourself, you're going to struggle having healthy relationships with other people.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's that saying, you can't give what you don't have.
Yeah. Well, just people are so distracted today to try to get people to focus. Sometimes it's good. Even like I'm a Buddhist, and we meditate and we chant and we focus for like a half hour or an hour. And it's Eastern philosophy. And it's like sometimes that's good, because in the Western world, it's like we get so caught up
Yep.
in all the distractions, and we don't know how to kind of get out of it until somebody tells you, like, oh, learn how to breathing exercise, or go do yoga. But you have to find a way to get out of that train. You get off that loop, because you just keep on doing the same thing, and you get into repetitive actions that are damaging. People just sitting there playing video games all day, or people with just running on their phone all day, kind of read the latest tweet, and they get addicted to it. They get addicted to things that you give them carpal tunnel.
Well,
It's like,
it's a distraction from reality, and it's really it's really unhealthy, because there's so much more to life. There really is so much more to life than, and it surprises me how some people can be on Instagram or Facebook for a half an hour or even more, and they're like, oh my God, where'd the time go?
yeah. Well,
And
that's what the new kind of addiction, and it's really
yeah,
not. It's taken away. Like, you could be doing some art. You
yeah,
could be exercising. You could be, making your body a better. You could be doing something more positive than running your thumbs and giving yourself carpal tunnel. It's like, for what? Are you giving yourself carpal tunnel for what? Like that. If you have one thing, practicing a piano or a flute, or being an athlete, or jogging, or skiing, or swimming, or going for a nature walk, but they're sitting there using your thumbs, reading the latest, like, reel, or tweet, or whatever, or something coming through on Twitch. It's like, why are you doing that with all your time? And
yeah.
then it really has taken away from other art, where people don't read novels, they don't read the poetry, they don't read the newspaper, there's things that would be better for your head, if you actually went to the library and picked up a book. But you know
Well, and I remember I did this whole podcast about self-care, and that's the critical thing too. Is like, there's so many things that you could be doing that is self-care for you, which is like creating music. It could be doing a painting. It could be journaling. It could be exercise. It could be meditation. It could be surfing. It could be snowboarding. There's
mhm.
all these things. You're like, what feeds your soul? And I'm just going to say it: Instagram, TikTok, Facebook does not feed your soul. Okay. I
Yeah,
mean, it gives
yeah,
you a temporary gratification, satisfaction, but there's so much more to life that really feeds your soul. Like just going outside in nature.
yeah,
And I tell people that when you, let's say, finally go outside in nature, and you're in this place where you feel so connected, everything is alive and thriving. Some people actually break down and cry. And what it means is you got so depleted, that you got so disconnected, that you had to be in this environment to give back to yourself.
well, I think, I don't know if it was Longfellow that had the poem about the cathedral is nature. But like, there's old, like, Victorian poetry about, like, the cathedral is nature itself. So you go out into
Oh
the
yeah.
woods, and that is the cathedral. I'm a mountain biker, I'm a hiker, and I'm a snowboarder, and snowshoer. And I live in New Hampshire, so I got tons of places to go. And so, I can just go out to a river trail like 10 minutes from my house and just walk it. And there's like this really beautiful area in our woods where all these monarch butterflies actually migrate every year, and
Wow.
they just stay in this one area where all these blueberry bushes are. And I just found it one time. I said, "Wow, so these are where all the monarchs are around here." And it was just like it was such a great find. I was like, "Wow!" That I kind of like. I told my daughter and I told some of my friends. I didn't want them to like scare off the monarchs, but the idea is like you go out into nature, and that was like, "Wow, I found this monarch like little zone where they found a place where they felt safe. They felt like that was their mating ground, or like was a stop or something."
Yeah.
And that to me is fantastic. That's what I loved about mountain biking, because I'd be going in these trails and you can go really far into the woods beyond what you can hike, because you can go further on your bike.
Yeah.
And you actually, I don't have headphones. I'm not listening to a Walkman. I'm actually listening to the woods,
Yep.
and I'm listening to, see the deer, see the turkeys, and see, like coyotes, and see foxes. And the thing is, once you're there and you respect them,
Yep.
I've been a mountain bike for 20 years. It's something about being in the woods. It's like being a woodsman. It's a different type of thing. And it is a way to get out of the city life, to get out of the, you're not on the Twitter, you're not on any of that. You're riding a
Right.
bike. And I was like, it's a really cool way to get out of that, dude. It's a really cool aerobic exercise,
It is.
because
It's magical being out in nature. I used to, when I was in my early 20s, I used to date a professional mountain biker, and he gave me one of his older mountain bikes from the last season he had. And oh my God, I had so much fun mountain biking and going around the lake and just,
I love it.
I did it every day. Whenever the weather was nice, I would spend like an hour and a half mountain biking, and I could just get lost
It's so
in the
fun to be
mountains.
able to go through the woods like that when you have a good bike,
Oh
and you
yeah.
actually can climb the hill, because you
Yep.
have the granite gear, and you can actually come down the hill. Because I
Yep.
got suspension bike, so I can go through like everything. I can come down a creek bed. I can
Yeah.
go up a creek bed. I
Yeah.
can go off of like rocks and land and not get messed up.
Yeah.
And it's just something about being able to be that rugged, but you're not polluting. You're not like you're on
Right.
a gas powered bike and you're making all the animals run away. Like you can actually kind of be there and not disturb them as much
Yeah.
as you would with a powered vehicle. And
Yeah.
so I just love the fact that you can get, I've had animals be able to, I've stopped and have deer come up to me, and I've been able to like, talk to beavers. Beavers like were talking to me. And I was
So
like,
cool.
yeah, it's a totally cool thing. And I'm part like Cherokee and Blackfoot Indian. So I think it's partly my Indian heritage that I can, people used to say, like, Keith, why are you stopping? It's like, well, these animals want to talk. So why wouldn't I stop? Like, it's like, I'm not on the clock. If they
Right.
want to, I
Exactly.
want to stop. If they're coming to see me, that actually means something,
Yeah.
based on what my great grandmother said. If an animal comes to you, that's a spirit animal. They're trying to tell you something. You ought to stop and listen.
Yeah.
you know, but in our world, people are like, well, I gotta go somewhere. So it's like, I don't got time for that. It's like, well, you're gonna have to wait, because I'm not going anywhere.
No, that's so cool. That's beautiful. No, I firmly, it's really being, present in the moment and really viewing the moment as what it is, because that moment is only there now. It will not be there in 5 minutes or whatever. It's the magic is in that moment right now, right then in that moment. And what are you going to do with it? Are you going to let it pass on by, or are you going to engage with it and fully be present and one with that? And when
That's
you
what, yeah.
do, it's almost like it's sacred. It's so spiritual. It's so magical.
Well, in the church, they like, I
Yeah.
think like the cathedral is nature, right? So, like, if you get out there, like, there is no clock. When I'm in the woods, I don't have a clock. I'm just gonna let it happen. It's kind of like, as a musician, sometimes like I've been with music, I'm more into jazz, right? So a lot of us will be the guy. I always have trouble with the guy that's like writing down every bar. Like when I work with somebody and they got to write down every bar, and it's got to be like a classical piece, and it's all so tightly controlled, there's like no room for anything, right? Where if I'm with a bunch of guys doing jazz, it's very improvisational. It's kind of stream of consciousness.
Yeah.
It's kind of like there's no time clock. There's no, like, we're not trying to, oh, it has to be perfect. Oh, you got to go back and stop. You got to stop because you didn't hit the note right. Like, no. Like if I do fusion jazz, we'll have a theme, but we can go off and come back and go off and come back, and we can do whatever we want. And the imperfection of it is the beauty of it,
Right.
right? The idea that you got to be totally predictable. I don't like that. I'm more of an artist that's like, I'm going to kind of stream of consciousness. I'm going to just kind of riff it. And it's the way I like to live, even when I'm out, doing other things. Like the way I do this podcast, I don't record it. I do it live because I'd rather do it like that.
Right.
I think it's more natural. That's just the way, a choice.
Yeah.
But
no, that's really cool. I mean, I'm kind of like the same way with dance. So I love to dance, and I tried taking dance classes, and I hated it because the music would say something to me in my body, but I couldn't be like 1, 2, 3, 4, 1,
you got to
2,
do the exact step. Yeah.
Oh my God, I hated it. But when friends have seen me dance, I tell them, I'm like, I am one with the music. Like my body moves with it
Mm-hmm.
and flows with it, and I get lost in it, and it's so magical. I mean, it's so beautiful that I just can't connect with the other form of dance style. I mean, I can appreciate it and respect it, but it just doesn't, work
Yeah,
for
it's
me.
like classically, if you
Same with
think
the
about
music.
if you think about a ballet dancer, they've got it really tight. Just like a classical musician, they sheet read, right?
Yeah.
Most jazz fusion, we don't sheet read. Not that I can't. It's just sheet reading a piece of jazz is like that's the kind of like, no, that doesn't work, right? Because the whole point is that you feel it, and that
Right.
it's a point in time type of art. Like, so that performance, that somebody's doing, like Coltrane, he did a performance every night. It's going to be slightly different because
Right.
based on how you feel. It's like a blues guy. Every time they play it, yeah, there's a certain structure to it, but they're going to perform it differently. Hendrix performed his songs differently every night, had the same structure, but they would go off. And that's what it is. And you listen to the Allman Brothers, they would do that. It's like, that is like fusion or jam band. There's something about that. Even the Grateful Dead were famous for that. They have these long 2-hour, 4-hour, 5-hour things because that's what it is. Like in the fans, like, they understand that, they appreciate that. But yeah, it is like the free flowing kind of improvisational stuff is more freeing for an artist than, I would hate to have to keep on playing Hotel California note for note every night. It would drive me crazy. I was like, I would just get out. I was like, get out the business. I can't do that.
Yeah.
I can't do it.
Yeah. I
It's
hear
not
you.
going to happen. But yeah, I think what's really interesting though is like what you've picked up on is this undetected narcissist and how important it is to identify them, right? And let people know that, that it's not them, right? Because a lot of people, I think, put everything on themselves. Like, if some things are, people put a lot of the blame on themselves. Like, is that what you have to, like, have people unlearn?
I think what a lot of people have to unlearn is that they're not a victim. I think that's a big thing a lot of people have to unlearn, because they get stuck in that anger and feeling like they were victimized and everything. And yes, in some way, what you did experience, you were a victim, but a lot of times some of the behaviors that happen are unconscious. They are automatic. And the best way when I do presentations about narcissism is I like to talk about the brain. So where most people live is up in the cortex brain. And for a narcissist, they live in the limbic brain, which has to do with survival, fight, flight, freeze, hypervigilant and stuff. Because that's how they learn to survive. I mean, we're all about self-preservation. And so they learned these behaviors at, whatever age, stage that they were. And the problem that happens is every single narcissist that's come up to me and has thanked me for, talking and doing the presentation, all said the same thing. They all said that they could feel themselves slipping from the cortex down into the survivor brain. And what I told them to do is I said, okay, really, really good. And why it's good is it's a crossroad. So in that crossroad, you have two things you can do. You can either go down that low road and rip that person apart and ruin that friendship, that relationship that you've always been doing. You can go down that road. But if you really care about that person, you want to salvage the friendship or relationship, you don't want to be a complete jerk, what I want you to do is say, hey, I'm getting really angry right now, and I know I'm going to say something or do something that I will later regret. And that's the key thing I need to stress is a narcissist doesn't have empathy, but they do have regret. Okay. And they do feel guilt. A sociopath does not. There's a big difference. Sociopath does not have guilt. They do not have regret, and they don't have empathy. So you can be a sociopathic narcissist. But the narcissists that were not sociopathic, I told them, tell them that. Say, hey, I'm getting really, really angry. I need to walk away. I need to calm down. I need to clear my mind because I care about you. And this friendship relationship is important to me. And so I tell them to do that. Walk away and look at something that's going to redirect you.
Mm-hmm.
And each time you do that, you're creating a new pattern, a new healthy way of acting, thinking, and behaving. You're literally creating new neural pathways in your brain. And the more you do it, the stronger it gets. So you're deactivating the nasty, bad habit that you always do, and you're creating a new positive one. And the more you do it, it will then anchor. And it will be supported. And so with one narcissistic guy, I told him to make video recordings of him playing with his daughter because he loved his daughter. Make videos of it with the light in her eyes and she's laughing, she's giggling. Do the same with your wife, interacting with your daughter. And every time you get mad, step outside and play that video and say to yourself out loud, if you can, I'm doing this for us.
So you don't do the negative behavior. You kind of you stop yourself when you think you're going to do it, so you can like redirect and actually retrain the narcissist to not be as much of a narcissist.
Yes. Yeah, and the guy literally, I saw him like 8 months later, and he was so happy and he was smiling. He was moving to a different state. He's like, I want you to meet my wife. I want you to meet my daughter. And he was a completely different man. I mean, it was so nice to see him change. And even though he said he still struggles with his demons, he now has them under control.
Well, you showed somebody, like a lot of times, if people don't have a roadmap on how to behave, if all they ever got was the bad behavior, then they don't. It's like an alcoholic. Like if your father was an alcoholic and all you saw him do is get smashed, like dead drunk, drink the whole bottle, then that's what you do because that's what you saw. If you didn't see any way if you don't see a way to get out of it, then you keep on repeating it. They do become the blackout alcoholic because your grandfather was, his great grandfather was, you are, your uncle was, everybody. That's what they did. That's what you do until the day you decide, well, you don't want to do that anymore. Because you don't want to repeat that because you see the damage that it does. So you change, the same thing with like, whether you're in that, other addictions or you're like a gambling or it's all the same pattern. If you saw something and you got pulled into it, it seems like if you find a way to relearn, one thing I'm an IT and part of the thing, one thing I love about being in information technology is we have to relearn all the time. We can't just say, oh, I've been doing something for 20 years and that's fine. I have to learn new technologies. Like I'm going to school all the time.
Right.
So I can't hold on to say I'm an expert, I'm the best. I have to go learn blockchain, or I have to learn AWS, or I have to learn, Java. I have to learn new stuff. And I sometimes there's stuff I don't know. So I have to know what I don't know. And
Right.
it's actually in my job has helped me realize like, hey, I don't know everything. There's always going to be something new. I'm going to have to learn it. And it's really helped me a lot in that I can not be trying to hold on to something and say, hey, that's, I just found a way that I thought that works for me to realize that I don't have to be stuck, that I actually need to
Right.
learn and reinvent myself all the time.
Well, what I tell a lot of, I've been telling clients for years is when we do those addictive behaviors, we are seeking an outside source of comfort because we are struggling inside. Because when you feel more secure about yourself, about your situation, about life, you're doing that self-care in a healthy way, giving back to you, and working on your stuff, you are less likely to do those addictive behaviors because then you are feeling good inside. You have self-respect, you have self-pride, you accept yourself, that you're perfectly imperfect, and you just take one day, at a time. And it's, it's easier said than done, but that's what I love about, hypnotherapy or meditation or, even breath work, different things that we can do. It's really just coming back to center, back to us, and, clearing your mind of all that unnecessary garbage. And I've worked with people that are alcoholics, people that have Oxycontin addictions, that are, addicted to drugs. I've worked with all kinds of people, even like psychic phone addiction. I've worked with people like that. I mean,
Yeah.
seriously, I remember one woman would spend almost between $500 to $1,000 a month
On that.
and
Yeah.
yeah, and just on, and I had to tell her, in her subconscious mind, that the psychic is not your friend. You
No,
are
they're
your
just a
paycheck.
scammer. Yeah, just another. They're just like going to the horse races, or going to the
Yeah.
casino. It's the same thing. I do have to kind of cut it. We're at an hour for our
Okay.
distributors, but I did love being able to talk to you because you're bringing a different perspective that I hadn't really discussed on this podcast before. And I want everybody to go to your website. And is that where everything? Can you get to your podcast from there? Can you get to all your sources from there?
You pretty much can, yeah. The podcast is on all the platforms. It's on Audible, it's on Amazon Music, Apple, Pandora, Spotify. It's on all of that. The Undetected Narcissist. And when I do the podcast, I like to incorporate a blog post with it that has additional supporting information. So that's on the website as well. I'm on Instagram, I'm on Twitter, I'm on Facebook. I don't scroll through it, but I'm on it. I just
Right. But I think it's great that we're on Spotify later today.
okay.
Well, most likely this is going to get published tomorrow because it's late for me. But
Yeah.
it will get fully published. It was live on Twitter, YouTube, Twitch, and
Right.
Facebook. But we will be fully published on through Anchor FM, on the Spotify video podcast, and Apple Podcast, and Radio Public, and a bunch of other plans. We on fanelectricghost.com, we have a blogger page, and every interview we do, we create a blog for it. We also create a landing page. They'll have
Nice.
all the social media. So you'll get a landing page with the Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, Spotify, Apple, all that by
I appreciate
tomorrow.
you.
And if you send us your email, we'll give you the other form of the forms, so you can actually clip it up yourself, so you can use it however you want.
To let your viewers know, because I've had people listen to me and be like, well, how do I get a hold of you? So my email is angela@undetectednarcissist.com.
Okay, great. Hey, through the private chat, if you type that in, I can grab that and then send your file.
Okay, I will do it now. Angela at
And then I can get that to you. And do you want that included on the actual description? Because I can add that. Or do you
Yeah,
want?
you can add it in the description as well. Yeah,
Okay, cool. Because some people don't want that because they don't want to get a lot of
okay.
emails. So I
No,
asked.
I really appreciate when people, email me and just even ask questions, because I know how it was. I literally know how it was to just be so confused and so in the dark. And it can be scary. It can be really frustrating. And sometimes you just need someone that you can talk to that has been there, that can relate with you and can give you good, sound, solid advice.
Well, I think our audience will appreciate that. We have a lot of creators that probably hit the wall sometimes, and they use art to work through the feelings. I do have a large fan base of other producers and writers and musicians and artists, and sometimes we do need some help, and it's cool when we find new resources like yourself. So I'm hoping that my other artist friends that I talked to for a while since 2016 take advantage of that email, and if they need to talk to you, they will. Thank you very much for being on the program.
Thank you. And you have a blessed day.
Thank you. You have a good night or
all right.
day.
Okay.
I always forget what time zone I'm in.
It's okay.
It's probably nighttime by now. It's getting night.